Welcome to Money Love, and thank you so much for joining us week after week. Remember, this is our little corner that we've created on this platform where we can talk about money. Now, I'm not an expert, I must put it out there. I'm just someone who has spent some time looking at the various options of personal finance that we've had in this country for several years, looking at investor rights and the various aspects of how we can invest our money, because I've always felt that the industry that gives out this kind of information tends to needlessly make it complicated, especially the business papers and the business channels make it sound like something you need to be an expert to be able to do, but it's actually not that complicated. So I've always, it's always been it's something that I felt really passionately about, to be able to break it down, understand it, spend some time reading about it, because it's something that benefits all of us, right? To understand personal finance better. So when we got this opportunity to do Money Love, I was like, yes, let's do this. And we got an opportunity to do it because of our partners. Our partner is Frio, which is a brand new banking experience like I keep telling you about. You should go check them out, because I've been checking them out also since we started this partnership. And it really is interesting. They're a startup, lots of young people, lots of cool people. They're simply figuring out new ways in which we can do things with our money that the old banking ways are just not cool enough anymore. They're just not intuitive enough. They're not fast enough. So as we have, and we talked about this in a previous episode, as we have transitioned from physical banking to using net banking to using sort of apps and facilities like these ones, we'll find that the number of steps that they need us to do, there's a little more intuitive about what we need to do with our money. They're a little more informed, and they're able to give us more insight into how our money is moving. So Frio is one such experience, and you should definitely go check them out, because I've enjoyed actually looking at the stuff that can be done on their app as well. So one of the things that came up over the last couple of weeks as we were talking about the different kinds of investment is cryptocurrency. Now again, I am not an expert in cryptocurrency, and I must say this out front, because it's not one of the traditional investment areas. So I haven't actually studied it for a long time. In fact, when we were doing the shows, when I spent most of my time reading up about it again to try and figure out what it is, and the usual question that everybody's asking is, should we be investing in cryptocurrency? But there's no one clear answer. I can tell you that everyone from Elon Musk and to the big startup guys here in India as well are talking about cryptocurrency and how this is the next thing. But there are different kinds of people. There are early adopters, and there are those of us who like to wait and watch and see how things play out before we put our money in it. Depends really on who you are. The reason why everybody is asking whether or not they should be putting their money in cryptocurrency is this chart. Okay, take a look at how Bitcoin alone has moved in the last 1 year. I mean, no other investment is looking at a chart like this. Maybe a little bit the Indian stock market has done something to that, but cryptocurrency, the movement in the last 1 year or so has been absolutely astounding, and which is why I think everybody's asking now, should we get in? This is a good time and things like that. But my rule for cryptocurrency is the same as my rule for anything else. You have to understand how that investment moves before you put your money in it. So if, and this I mean really strongly, okay guys, if you feel that the fixed deposit, the good old fixed deposit where you give your bank a certain amount of money for a fixed term and they give you some return, is the only investment that you truly understand, then by all means use only the fixed deposit, because that comfort that it gives you is more important than anything else. If you feel you understand how mutual funds work, then use mutual funds. If you understand how the stock market works, then use stock markets. If you understand how cryptocurrency works, then use cryptocurrency. So fundamentally what I'm saying is, spend some time reading about it. There are a ton of videos, all over the internet that you can access. There are various updates on what's going on in crypto. So spend some time, understand it. You'll get a sense of confidence, saying, I know what I'm doing now. Start with a small amount of money, and if you really want to, then move forward. So as you start off on this journey to try and figure out what cryptocurrency is and how you can understand it, let me sort of help you along as well, because I've also been trying to figure it out. Let's take a look at, we looked at how it moved over the last 1 year. I also want to take a look at how popular it has become in India. Now in India, research tells us, and this is data by Chainalysis, they have said that cryptocurrency investments has grown from 200 million to 40 billion in India. That's a growth of 200x in the past 1 year alone. So obviously, this is something that people are finding very exciting at this point. And you know that there are countries specifically like El Salvador that have legalized Bitcoin and made it sort of legal tender. And we'll go into what that means as well. I just want to first explain to you what cryptocurrency is. Now, crypto means something that is encrypted. Fundamentally, which other people cannot read, and only those people who are meant to sort of decode it can read it. That's fundamentally what encryption means, right? So there was initially encrypted communication, and then there was from that encrypted currency. And I just want to take you through this journey. Okay. And it's really the journey of the human race and the journey of economics, which you would have all studied if you have studied economics. So initially, when human beings started doing agriculture and started growing more than they needed for that particular season of eating, they realized that they had a surplus, and then they started trading that surplus. So I will take your cow, and in return, I will give you so many kgs of wheat. That was the barter system that initially started off when people started trading things for things. But then there was a problem of that not always being uniform. And also, maybe I don't want wheat in return for my livestock. Maybe I want something else, and that is not available to me, but I'm forced to take wheat because that's the only thing you have to offer. That was the barter system, which was our first sort of step into economics and our first sort of tender that we used. That then moved in order to bring in that uniformity, especially when people started trading outside of their little community and they started going into other, let's say, countries or other races and trading. They needed something uniform, and that uniformity came from a precious metal like gold. Gold coins and gold became the basis of trade. Now the problem with gold was that it was in limited supply, and that also then after some time became an issue. Then the next thing that happened is where we are right now, which is currency, legal tender currency, which was issued by that government of that land and was used by people to sort of move things around. We have not moved since then. From legal currency of countries from back then till now, this is roughly where we are. So every country then has a government. The government has a bank. In our country, that's the RBI, that regulates this currency. It decides how much to print, it decides how much to value it at. If it prints more, then there's more of that currency in the market and the value comes down. So basically there are governments that actually manage it. Now that currency is legal tender within your border. What if you want to do a deal with someone who's outside your border? You have to do an exchange of currency at certain values. When you do that exchange of currency at certain values, you pay tax, you pay charges to the bank that's actually facilitating that exchange. And then of course there is the tracing of which money is going where and to whom. This is fundamentally the system that we work on. So for example, if you were to send money or make a payment to someone who's overseas, you would have to use a bank to do that. The bank will check the IDs of both of these people. The bank will charge you a fee. You will have to pay tax on that, and then you'll have to pay your currency exchange. Now, fundamentally, what happened back in 2008, when the whole meltdown happened of the economy, there was this idea that as ordinary citizens, we are gravely impacted by the policies of government. Now, government is not always good. And most of the people in the West also realized that during their crash of 2008, the government is not always working on the side of ordinary people. It's more often than not working on the side of its very wealthy friends. And so you have this currency and this system that is being regulated by people who are not doing this in your interest, and there's nothing you can do about it, because when there is inflation, it affects you. When there is a devaluation of your currency, it affects you. When you want to do a deal with someone overseas, you have to pay a lot of money. So fundamentally, the idea was almost like an inqilab idea. It was a protest idea, which is, let us come up with a currency that government cannot control, that they have absolutely no control over. And that currency can move because of the internet, because the internet is that one revolution that allowed us to sort of make a flat world and talk to anybody, anywhere in the world immediately. Here was a currency that they came up with saying you could pass it anywhere around the world. It's not physical, it's a virtual currency, and so no government controls it. That was the fundamental, paper concept of cryptocurrency. And the first one obviously was Bitcoin. So after that massive financial collapse in 2008, there was an individual who nobody has ever met called Satoshi Nakamoto, who came up with Bitcoin. Now we don't know who this person is. We can't ask him what he was thinking when he came up with it. But while his identity is still a mystery, this was the world's first digital currency, and it was quite the rage back then. But it was a small group of people who were mining for it and who had digital currency. It has moved massively from there. I was checking the price right now. Bitcoin is currently at 61,175 US dollars. That's about, I think, if I'm not mistaken, about 46 lakh rupees per Bitcoin. So it has increased substantially in value, but when it first started, it was just an idea. The idea was for a purely digital currency that can be moved around the world without and can be exchanged, and payments can be made without any sort of interference from a third party. Third party in this case being a bank or an intermediary. Now the question is, and like I said, when you start to look at different things, everything has its positive and also has its disadvantages. So what are the disadvantages really of cryptocurrency, whether Bitcoin or otherwise? Fundamentally, like I told you, because it's not regulated, there's nobody to complain to. So if for example, your money gets stolen by a hacker because it's virtual, there's nobody who can do anything for you. If you happen to lose the hard drive, there was one individual who lost a hard drive or who threw away a hard drive with his Bitcoin details in it, apparently now worth about $500 million. But there's nothing he can do. There's nobody to complain to because there's no intermediary keeping track of that transaction. So if you lose it, you lose it. If you make a wrong transaction, if you enter the wrong number, you transfer to a wrong person, they can't do anything about it. So for example, if you were to do something, and if you were to lose something, and you could go to a bank and complain saying that, this money was hacked out of my account, and the bank would help you because the bank is tracking you. But here there's nobody tracking you. So the next question to ask is, if there's nobody tracking, how are these transactions valid? Now, the difference here is, cryptocurrency uses something called blockchain technology, which is complicated, and we'll get to that in a later video. But fundamentally, instead of one entity, which is the bank, tracking every transaction. So when you, for example, go to a shop and you swipe your card, or you make an online payment when you're buying something online, that vendor that you're buying from automatically checks with your bank. Your bank checks if your account has that much money and says, yes, we can make that payment. And so the vendor then registers it, takes the payment out of your account. The bank registers both of you guys and say, hey, this transaction has happened in its ledger. So what happens when you do a cryptocurrency transaction? There's actually a network of computers across the world that are anonymous, that are simultaneously tracking transactions, which means a couple of things. It means that basically, there will never be an outage. You will never really have a system which crashes. It will always be working around the world at all times. But it also means, like I said earlier, there's no one to complain to if something goes wrong, if you lose the coins or you pay the wrong person. The question to ask again before we talk about whether or not we should be investing in cryptocurrency is cryptocurrency legal in India? There are two answers to this question. Yes, it's legal, and no, it is not legal tender. And there are two different things. Let me get into it. So basically, the currency is not controlled by government, it's not regulated by the RBI, and the transactions are not tracked. So obviously, this is something that makes the RBI and the regulators very nervous, because they're like, you're going to use this to fund terror, or you're going to use this to buy things off the dark web. All wrong criminal things are going to happen because the government is not able to track it. So there was a point in 2018 when the RBI just effectively banned cryptocurrency by telling banks, NBFCs, which are non-banking financial organizations, and all of the entities regulated by it, not to facilitate any cryptocurrency sort of transactions. With this, what happened is the exchanges on which you can buy and sell cryptocurrency came to a grinding halt, because if I can't take money from your bank into the exchange, then that transaction can't happen at all. These exchanges then went to court, and 2 years later, in 2020, the Supreme Court quashed that order. So it is legal for you to take your money from your bank account right now into an exchange. There's proper KYC that gets done, and to buy cryptocurrency and hold it in your wallet or hold it in that exchange. You can do that. You're perfectly legal to do that. but it is not legal tender. And what does that mean? It means that you cannot buy something and pay with cryptocurrency, that it's not something that you can use as transaction in India. You can't buy stocks, or you can't buy a mutual fund and put your cryptocurrency in there. So once it's in that exchange, that is where it is. And that's where we are right now. We also understand from statements that the finance minister has made in the past that the government is considering writing out regulations for the cryptocurrency exchanges and for cryptocurrency investment, so that there is some sort of guardrails for it, and this will probably be passed through Parliament at some point. Right now we don't know what the details of those rules are. Now, there are a couple of ways to enter the cryptocurrency market. One is mining. It's possible to mine these coins across the world using very large computers doing complicated math problems. It's really not something that regular citizens can do. The second, like I told you, is to use a cryptocurrency exchange like CoinDCX Go. There are several ones that you can choose from. There's Unocoin, there's CoinDCX, there's CoinSwitch, Kuba. They're all popular exchanges in the country right now. You have to do some reading to make sure that this is something that you're comfortable with. Like I said, there's no fixed structure and there's no regulation, so there's no uniformity in what they charge and what their process is. So you'll basically need to speak to people, word of mouth, see which one is comfortable, which one you like, and then get started. My advice remains that start with a really small amount of money. You can start with 100 rupees. Obviously, if one Bitcoin is currently available for 46 lakh, you're not going to go out and buy one of those, right? You can buy in fractions. You don't have to buy the whole thing. So when you buy a fraction, you can, in some cryptocurrency exchanges, start with as little as 100 rupees. It might make sense to start small. So even if you decide that this currency is not, the exchange is not worth it, you're not losing a lot of money. So start small, get your toe wet, and decide whether or not you want to go forward. The process is actually fairly, it's familiar. There's a KYC that you have to do, like everything else. When you basically, your PAN card, your photo ID, your address proof, you sign up on the crypto exchange, you open an account, you move money from your bank account into that account, and then you start buying whatever you want to buy. There are more than one type of cryptocurrency. Bitcoin obviously is the most popular one and has done really well because it was the first one. But there's also Ethereum, there is Tether, there is XRP, there are several others that you can also take a look at. Remember, like I told you earlier, it's really important how you store your currency. It's really important the safety that you put, because like I said, there's no formal institution backing it and it's across the world. If it gets hacked or if you lose it, there's really nobody you can complain to in order to restore what you have lost, and that is a problem. Like I said, research the exchanges and do your homework. Ensure you store your currency safely with a strong code, and prepare for volatility as well. This is how much time we have for this week. But if you have more questions about cryptocurrency, we will dig deeper and we'll find some more answers for you. One of the other options is, and you can tell me whether this is something you'd want to do, we could bring in a couple of experts and we can do like maybe a live session where we simply ask questions and answer questions about cryptocurrency. Give us 2 thumbs up if that's something that you'd like to do. We'll also have a live session on Instagram one of these days where we'll start answering questions from previous episodes. There are several questions on the insurance episode as well that we should answer soon. Quick shout out to Frio. Remember, Frio is our partner. It's a brand new digital banking experience, and they're the ones who help us bring this show to you week on week. So we're really grateful to have them on board. Do check them out as well. Thank you so much for watching. Leave us comments in the comment section. It'll be my pleasure to hear from you.